Hey, good evening, everybody. It is May 9th, another Wednesday. And I'm sorry that Conant Show didn't get to come off last week at the appointed time. There was a pretty massive power outage that I still don't have a complete understanding of. But we lost the show, and I'm sorry that I couldn't put one out for y'all. But we have a show for you tonight. And as always, I would like to thank Paula Gloria Barton for teching for me and helping make a seamless show as best as we can in a somewhat compromised TV studio. And
thank you, George.
No, you're very welcome. And so tonight, I'm going to cover a couple of different things, and I just want to do a quick update on the Burnette versus Anson and Conant civil suit in Poughkeepsie, New York. Once again, we have had a pretrial conference with the new judge, Christy Acker, and she appears to be showing a bit of bias against us. And she's allowed a motion to be put forward to re-argue a point that Judge Grossman, the preceding judge, had thrown out, which was conversion of stolen property. And what's interesting about this is that the first attempt at conversion with Judge Grossman failed because it didn't have merit and was nonspecific, and it was all generic stuff. And so many months later now, the opposition has elected to try to bring back, and at this point they've got a motion permitted to come back, to re-argue conversion of stolen property when there is no merit to it. That was how it was decided in the criminal case, and now so the fraud continues, folks. What's interesting to note, you have a thought there?
Oh, they had asked for that to be determined first. The criminal
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, well, it seems as though Judge Grossman has been reassigned to Putnam County. I wonder if he asked to go to Putnam County rather than was reassigned. But in any event, this new Judge Christy Acker, apparently lives in Rhinebeck, along, in the same neighborhood and community as our opponent, which we find interesting. Anyway, the upshot is that this last appearance conference on May 4th, last Friday, was attended only by the opposition's junior lawyer, James Oliveri. And so once again, Ty has elected not to show up. This is like a second or third time she doesn't show up to the conference. Granted that she did hire a lawyer to do her bidding, so she doesn't have to, but we think that that's, kind of an indication of her reluctance to be seen in the courtroom. Don't know what that's about. Maybe she's afraid of us. Ooh. Anyhow, so it turns out two vital people from Ty's past have recently come forward and indicated to Laura that they would like very much to testify in the event this goes to trial. And what I'd like to impress upon you all is that we're all great guns to go to trial. If that's, where this is going, bring it on. Because this is where, in my opinion, we will really tease out and expose the fraud that instituted this entire action and activity. As it stands, we are so grateful, at the community support that Laura has really been getting, and we really feel it. And, almost every day that either Laura or I are on shift at the cinema, customers will come in and indicate their support and tell us yet another, malicious thing that has transpired, words and such out of our opponent's mouth in local restaurants, eateries, and so on. So, we really do appreciate and are really grateful for all the community support and to get so many people coming forward and not being afraid. A number of people really have indicated that they want to testify on Laura's behalf and mine as well, to shine the bright light of truth on this murky situation. What's interesting to us is that there are people who we were told by Ty that were against Laura, and we really were kind of sorry to hear these kinds of things, but they've also surfaced in the course of our lives and at work and in town, really indicating a lot of support for Laura, and so for that, we're feeling a lot of gratitude, and I just want to give a shout to all of you out there who know who you are. Thank you, and it really makes a difference in our daily life to know that we've got such a base of support here in the Woodstock community. That's kind of about wraps up that portion of the show. And I mean, I was going to go a little bit further and deeper into the nature of the bias that Judge Acker is now laying on us. One of them is a due process violation, which is prohibiting us from any paperwork. She doesn't want any more paperwork from our side unless it is an answer to their motion. So she's really, determined to push this along, which is fine to a degree, except for, the...
You say their motion. How can they move the court without an affidavit?
Well, okay, all right, you reminded me of something. On a positive note on our side, Judge Acker relented and refused the motion from the opposition to strike, seal, or dismiss my affidavit of truth and fact and my claim and counterclaim. So, much to the dismay of Mr. Oliveri, and I'm sure Mr. Rosen and Ty are in the background, it turns out that my affidavit is standing tall. It's still in play. And my claim and counterclaim, they are now being given the chance to argue it. Now, this is what's interesting, and this is where the snowball effect of how the fraud vitiates everything it touches. They had 30 days to respond to my affidavit of truth and fact. That was the second one. My first affidavit of truth and fact was my answer to the summons. They wrote me a summons, and they said I had to respond to it, so I responded to it. And I responded to it with a detailed affidavit of truth and fact with my claims and counterclaims included. And we didn't hear back from the opposition for 3 months. That's 60 days more than 30 days, isn't it? Okay? Now, we are now 18 months, 19 months into this proceeding, and the opposition has not yet made one sworn statement of any kind, affidavit or otherwise. It has all been affirmations by a lawyer. Okay? Uncontested. I have put in my paperwork for a default judgment, and they are ignoring it, trying to dismiss it, but I'm not letting it go. It's on the record. It's there.
No, you want it dismissed.
No. They're trying to dismiss my motion to dismiss and default judgment. So the fraud is that Well, there's a lot of it. I mean, where to begin? But in the context of the present situation, where now Judge Acker has stepped into the mud bucket here, the fraud bucket, and she is allowing them to selectively cherry pick what they will and will not rebut. So she's allowing them to strike, some of my affidavit of truth and fact and some of my claims and counterclaims based on what criteria. Does the opposition get to do this? I don't know, but they can't do that as a matter of law, as I understand it. And the fact is that now, 18 months into this, charade, the opposition, having defaulted in rebutting, is now being given an opportunity to rebut after they tried to get it thrown out. I mean, it's just a train wreck. No, I didn't accept it. I started out, in my discussion with the judge, this is the second time with Judge Acker, I told her very clearly, both the first conference and second conference with her, that she does not have jurisdiction. She does not have jurisdiction because there's fraud upon the court, and she will not address that fraud. She won't talk about it. She just ignores it. And she can't do that either. And I also made it very clear that I am reporting a crime. So she is culpable to the crime if she does nothing about it. That's called misprision of felony. Now, so bring it on. As these facts, and this is something that, in many discussions I have with Laura, I said, let's just focus on the facts. The facts are that we had a birthday party on the 22nd of November 2015 that it was attended by Ty, her boyfriend Josh Kroner, and a stranger, a hired hand, Rita Pizzaro, in a very uncomfortable 3-hour, dinner party where these people were clearly not going with the program that they were set up to go with because I was there watching them. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be at work because Ty hired, and this is what she said, you said this, Ty, that you hired a private detective to see who all our employers were and what we were doing and so on and so forth. So I didn't go by the script of being at work that Tuesday night. And then on the 23rd, the next day, Ty and her pals, I don't know, I can't remember who all they were, went to the state police and filed a sworn complaint of a felony level of possession of stolen property, criminal possession of stolen property, all right? With iPhone photographs that I watched her take of objects that were unknown to us, brought into our home that night on the 22nd. So the 23rd, she goes in, she makes a sworn complaint, and then while I'm driving the JFK, Laura's next to me to take the car back, right? And she's getting text messages off the hook that, Ty wants to, straighten some matter out, and that, no men be present, that her mother's afraid of men. And I'm saying, what's this all about? And Laura's like kind of distressed, and I'm saying, whatever you do, don't let that woman in the house, until I get back, so there's a witness. Because I was onto him, folks. And I got a paper trail going way back to the beginning of this whole thing where I was attacking the criminal court with a cease and desist and all kinds of other paperwork and intervention. I have detailed this from square one, this fraud. All right? Okay? So we're on the way to JFK. Ty's gone to the police, made a sworn complaint, felony charge, and then the next day, I'm in Canada teaching a native program, and Laura gets robbed by 3 women. Kitten Otto, Rita Pizzaro, and Ty Burnette came into her home under false pretenses, ransacked, and robbed her, and the police and the DA and no one of any authority will do anything about it because Ty complained first. That's it. Those are the facts. And after 2.25 years, Judge Lamb, the only actor in this play who did right by us, dismissed it in the interest of justice because the charges had no merit, there was no evidence, and as far as he was concerned, there was no police investigation. Even though the police harassed us and our employers and our friends for 4 months, and after investigator Kinderman of the New York State Police sees 2 truckloads, pickup truckloads worth of stuff on Ty Burnett's kitchen floor in Rhinebeck and assigned that to our home. That came from our house. That came from Laura's house. Okay? That's the fraud, everybody. And that's the fraud that I am going to continue to expose, and that eventually some authority is going to have to take this up and put the onus on the corruption and on the originator of that fraud. And that's you, Ty. So that's the facts. That's not disputable. And even in the dismissal, it says undisputed facts. There was no police investigation. What is he really saying there? Oh yeah, there was a police activity, but they never came to our home because Ty had circumvented them. She had already wiped Laura out of her prized possessions and treasures from her former marriages, from her mom, from her ex-boyfriend. She robbed Laura with 2 accomplices. And that, friends, is felony. Robbery, 2nd degree. All right? I don't mean to belabor the subject. I mean, I bring it up, frequently because it's an active thing in my life and it affects this community. I've also learned that next to the Catskill Mountain Pizza, the building that's being renovated next to the pizza, apparently Ty is either renting or buying it to put a little store together. So Ty's going to be a businesswoman in town, coincidentally. So there you go. And I don't know where else I can go with this for the time being. But this is a matter for our community, so I do bring it up because we're not the first victims of Ty Burnette, and a lot of people have lived in fear of her in this town and have been affected by her shenanigans in the past, and many of those same people are also very, very hungry to get their testimony before the judge. So whatever may come, bring it on. The truth is a very unforgiving thing sometimes. So, moving right along.
Set you free.
Yeah, it can. It can set you free. There's some of these elements are really disturbing. I want to just, one final thought is, while this was going on in the criminal proceedings, Laura had gone through a couple of lawyers, and one of them that we weren't happy with any of them, all right, except for maybe the first one, but he said something to me that was really quite interesting, and he said, and I quote, this is Tom Petro, he said, "This is the most sinister case I have ever seen in his 34-some years of being a criminal lawyer." What is he talking about? The most sinister case. So there's that. Not sure where to go with that. I had another kind of a thought behind that one, but I got so excited about Tom Petro's thought that kind of, okay. Anyway, so I'd like to wander on over to a couple other different topics now, and of real interest is this business of the Earth's magnetic field weakening because of solar cycle 24, which is the one we're in right now, is a grand solar minimum. So I am seeing in so many different YouTube presenters, science blogs and such, There's a constellation of events happening on Earth right now, folks, that's affecting the geomagnetic field of the planet itself. There's a pole reversal going on, as well as the North Pole is physically wandering towards Siberia. Something like 40 miles a year for the last decade, which is that's a big wobble on the Earth. Among other... Well, you know what? They do, if you're a star watcher like I am. And I watched, I've been watching two constellations in particular. One is Orion, which is we're now going into the summer phase of the sky. So you don't really see Orion until very, very late at night or very, very early in the morning, which is, I think, kind of the same time, actually. And then the Big Dipper, or Ursa Major. And now... the Big Dipper is a real good indicator for me, because that, if you know what I'm talking about, there are the four main stars which make the cup of the Big Dipper, and then there's like three more stars that reach out, which make the handle. And now Polaris is our pole star, and you find Polaris by lining up the two stars all the way on the edge of the cup, not the handle side of the cup, but the outside of the cup. And those two stars will point to a prominent star called Polaris. Now that star is the pole star because it's the one star that doesn't move as the Earth rotates, you see. So as you observe it, and you can see these time-lapse photography where you'll see these streaks of the stars all spinning around this one point. That's Polaris. Well, what I noticed in the past couple of days, we had a nice clear night the other night, is that I line up north with our street. So I have a physical reference point to the stars and to the four directions, the cardinal directions. And what I noticed is that the Big Dipper is significantly shift. I would say the shift is as much as 10 degrees, and that's a lot on that scale. So it's a shift of about 10 degrees over positive from north. So it's really like pointing north-northeast to some extent. At least that's what I saw the other night. What's interesting about all this is that people are taking sun observations using the webcams, the weather webcams. They're all over the world. They're automated. They're always, they're located in all these different places around the world, really specifically just to monitor the weather all around the world. And people monitor, these different cameras. And they're, you can go online and whichever camera is from whichever connected to whatever local weather science station, and whatever is, that comes under, like in the United States, it would be the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Authority or Association, or NASA is another one. And then there's the Met, Meteorological Society or Royal Meteorological Society over there in Great Britain, and then in Australia there's a meteorological, so they have all these different webcams under all these different aegises, and you can find them and you can look at them and you can see, and you can go back in time and you can make animations. There's all kinds of great stuff you can do with these tools. Well, what a lot of these YouTube presenters are showing is that from day to day the sun is rising in different places in relative to its, normal, predictable thing. And this is what the Hopi Indians and the Inuit up north up in the Arctic, they're saying, sun's rising in different places, folks. It's rising and setting in different places than where it should be. And now these are people who've been taking measurements of the sun, and they use natural alignments, whether it's peaks of mountains or something relative to that. So they have these markers. They have a place where they sit, and then over thousands of years and all of the hundreds of generations of people that are involved with that, they take notes. This is where the sun should rise at this particular day of the year. Or they measure it this way. Well, we know it's time to plant because the sun is rising over this peak at this time of year. So they're saying the sun ain't rising in the right places here anymore. And on these webcams, the difference from day to day of where the sun is rising, like whether it's from the Norway one or the Geneva one, or there's all these different webcams out there. And you can see these people are doing animations. The sun's, 10 degrees over here one day. The next day is 10 degrees to the left. That's a big wandering going on. When it's really, it's ordinarily, it's a very stable kind of an event. All right. So the Earth is wobbling in this scenario. So what else could be at play? It could be Planet X, the Planet X system that is being tracked really since the 1890s. But when it got to around the 1920s, there was the Palomar Observatory out in California, and there was a well-known astronomer, can't think of his name, sorry about that, but back in the 1920s and 30s, the observations were being made of Pluto having an eccentricity in its orbit, like a wobble. And the only way that could really happen in this idea of astrophysics is that there would have to be yet another object out there in space perturbing the orbit, is how they would call that, of Pluto. And that perturbation was becoming magnified over the decades, and then by the 1950s, another astronomer came forward and said, look, there's Planet X out there. It's big, whatever it is. It's really pushing Pluto around. We're looking for it now. And so by the 1960s, NASA gets a hold of this stuff, and they just clam up. No more discussion until the 1970s and 1980s. And by this time, that's when Zecharia Sitchin became popular with the 12 Planet series, where the translations of the ancient Sumerian cuneiform describing this planetary system and a dark star that comes along with it, a brown dwarf, and other planets that crosses every 3,600 years the orbit of our Earth and with our star Sol, the sun. So we're in that now, apparently. And there's a great effort to suppress that information from the public. But not only that, there's a great effort to impair our ability to actually make good, solid observations of the sky. Now, I haven't seen some of the anomalies that other YouTubers out there are posting myself yet. I mean, every once in a while, I just, take my welding goggles and I put the welding goggles on. I look at the sun and say, well, it looks like the sun to me. I really don't see anything else. I haven't spotted anything yet of that magnitude, which most of these sightings are in tropical areas or in the southern hemisphere. So it could be relative just to the angle of the northern hemisphere of this thing. I don't know. But there have been really weird photographs of double sunsets, weird lighting in the sky, which looks like more than one light source. So that could be affecting our Earth on the gravitational wavelength field phenomena. And some of that might be what's going on in Hawaii right now. What's going on in Hawaii right now is pretty amazing, folks. The big island, the big island in Hawaii with the I can't remember the name of that volcano, is erupting. It's definitely erupting. It's spewing out a lava. But what's more worrisome for the people, because they're kind of used to it, right? They're island people. They live on a volcanic island, and they adjusted their society to that. But what's different this time is now you have civilization having moved in with their cities and infrastructure, and the Leilani estates are evacuated now because of the fissures in the earth have opened up, and every so many 100 feet or so many 100 yards, the fissure continues. It sort of opens up in places, across roads and swallowing houses. I mean, lava's coming out. I mean, Hawaii is a mess right now. I mean, they're freaked out down there, and they don't know how long it's going to last or how bad it's going to get. That's Hawaii. Then there are fissures opening up in Peru, up high and down in the valleys. There's a huge fissure in Kenya, in the Rift Valley, that seems to be separating a chunk of Africa off from Africa. It's going to become another ocean is going to spill into this thing. So it seems as though the Earth is being tugged or the Earth is expanding. I don't know. But there's also a lot of weird stuff going on with the animals around the world. And now there's this YouTube presenter by the name of MrMBB333. MrMBB333. Really great stuff this guy puts up. He has a comprehensive website on all this kind of stuff with space weather and Earth phenomena and all this kind of thing. But his presentations is largely constructed with videos and stills that people send him. And lately, it's been weird animal behavior. The animals are trying to tell us something. There are owls on office buildings looking in the window trying to get the attention of the people in the office building. There are geese hanging out in the middle of highways trying to stop traffic. There are ducks in places where ducks don't happen. And out in Iowa, on some of the lakes out in Iowa, the people are taking incredible videos of pelicans, flocks and flocks of pelicans. Pelicans don't hang out in the middle of a continent like Iowa on a freshwater lake. But there they are. Never happened before. And this kind of thing is happening all over the world. And it's not just birds. A raccoon, I think, where was it? Was it in Australia maybe? A raccoon climbed into the air conditioning duct there's like these external air conditioners for jet aircraft when they're in the hot beating sun and they're not moving. They have to put an external air conditioner to keep the people inside from cooking. They get hot in there. So a raccoon got into this air conditioning duct and then they didn't know it, and it got connected to the airplane, and then they scurried into the ducting of the airplane. So now they've got this raccoon that held the airplane up for like 3 hours, where they had to actually take panels off the exterior of the plane to get these people home, to get this raccoon out. Then a hunter was out, and they got a little iPhone movie of a squirrel that refused to get off the barrel of the gun of the hunter. He was like doing gymnastics on the barrel of the gun. The hunter's just standing there laughing. He's like, he's never seen anything like this. The squirrel came up, jumped on his gun, and is like playing on the gun. And I watched it, and it goes on for minutes and minutes. It's not like this random thing. I mean, this was a determined little squirrel. Another one is a squirrel came up to the back door of some lady's house, and I don't know, New Jersey. Gosh, I don't know where this was. And you see the squirrel, he picks up an acorn, looks up at the lady, and goes like this. And then he goes back to his acorn. And the lady goes, "Did I really just see that?" And so Mr. MB333, he replays it, and you see the little squirrel wave at him. He goes, "Yep, he did." It's kind of cute, but what his premise is that the animals are trying to tell us something. And then there's the birds. There's birds falling out of the sky, flocks and flocks of them. And again, this is like out west in the United States, up in Canada, in Australia, all different places around the world. Birds will just be flying along and then boom, just drop to the ground. Many of them dead. They don't know why. They don't understand the pathology. Then there are other kinds of birds that are just coming up to people, like asking for help, as if they're blinded. And this is where the connections get interesting with the global magnetosphere, they call it. The magnetosphere is very weak right now because of this pole flip. The differentiation between the North Pole and the South Pole, the magnetic-wise, is very, very confused right now. We have actually two magnetic North Poles right now because it's split and it's migrating. And then down in the South Pole, I'm not sure what's going on down there, but it's probably something similar. It's very weak in any event. When that happens, the magnetosphere of our planet is part of the layering of energy, I guess, that protects us from certain particles in the solar wind. So what's coming off of the sun, some of that is UV, ultraviolet radiation. That ultraviolet radiation, or ultraviolet light, if you will, has three components, or three varieties. There's UVA, which gets all the way to the surface, and that our biology and all life on the planet is adapted to, right? It doesn't really harm you. In fact, it can be beneficial for you. But then there's UVB and ultraviolet C, which is really, really dangerous. Ultraviolet B is known to cause cancer, skin cancers, and ultraviolet C is like a whole order of magnitude more dangerous. And the levels of ultraviolet B and C are very high right now around the world. And so, just so you know, folks, it's probably a good idea not to expose yourself to too much sunlight at a time. I'm not big on sunscreen. I never wear the stuff. But, long sleeve shirt or a big, wide brim hat, and limit your exposure if you're sunbathing and stuff. Until further notice. I mean, I don't really know what much else to say about that. But how that relates to birds being disoriented or acting funny or being blinded is that it is known that birds and bees and some reptiles and even some mammals like cats, they suspect cats might be able to see into the ultraviolet range, might be being blinded by the UV that's coming through and making it to the surface. Another worry here is what ultraviolet toxicity will do to the phytoplankton, and it could be that the phytoplankton out there in the oceans, which give us oxygen and oxygenate the ocean, are taking a pretty hard hit right now as well. So keep an eye on your gardens out there. Keep an eye on your leaves. If your leaves look like they're getting burned, it could be the ultraviolet. So that's some of the really grand scale things that are happening to our planet right now, and I'm reporting what other people are reporting from all. I mean, I look at several YouTube channels that are quite interesting. One is WSO. Another one is the Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Another one is Grand Solar Minimum. Another one is MrMBB333. And a good website, Anthony Watts Up With That. His website is a good overall science on the climate and on the earth website. And, another thing that is really interesting and relative to the Grand Solar Minimum, and I really should explain a little more why this is so important, is that Arctic ice, as of at least a day ago, is still growing. It was showing a real, lackluster performance, up until about a month ago. And everybody's saying, "Oh, it's so warm in the Arctic." And you know what? It ain't that warm. Just because it's below average by 10 degrees for a few weeks is still below zero. Just to put it in perspective, it's still below zero. It's still quite cold. And they were trying to make like it was melting away. It's not. We're seeing record ice growth in May in the Arctic. Northern Hemisphere snow cover, Canada, Russia, all around, the Northern Hemisphere is at an all-time record high. They've never seen anything like this. Planting is going to be really hard in Canada. Their wheat, they can't get to the fields. Many of those fields are still either wet or covered in snow. That extends down into our growing areas as well. The Dakotas, Iowa, Nebraska, these places like that, there is a pretty severe drought the further south you go, south of, say, Kansas and in those areas, West Texas. They need a lot of rain. They really do need a lot of rain or snow or something to fill those lakes. But that is some of what happens during a grand solar minimum. But what makes our time so unique is that we're getting a grand solar minimum combined with a pole flip, magnetic pole flip, combined with a physical pole shift. And now all of these things happen on a cycle. But when they all happen at the same time is very rare, like once in, millions of years kind of a thing. Because some of these cycles, like a solar cycle, is about 24 years, roughly speaking, because it modulates. It's not always 11 years or 12 years. Sometimes it's a 13-year half cycle, or sometimes it's a 10-year half cycle. So the whole cycle could be 20 years, or it could be as much as 30 years. So there's wiggle room there. But then you get into the longer cycles with the sun called Milankovitch cycles. Sunspot cycles, total irradiance cycles. And right now, our sun, very minimal, almost no sunspots. Now, and it's the sunspots, those solar storms, that generate the heat that gives us, our Goldilocks climate. So, I would say, folks, that would do you well to consider, food storage. Food prices are going to go up. Adapt2030. That's another YouTuber channel to really pay attention to. These are smart people, and they put up the hard science. They're not just talking like I am. They have a lot of the tools available to put a real nice program together, so you can really get a good idea about what's going on with our environment and our climate. Food scarcity is the biggest theme amongst at least 4 of these channels. Prepare by getting dry goods now, things that preserve a long time, fertile seeds, fertile non-GMO seeds, wheat stock, wheat berries, oat berries. This is all stuff that it's better to side on the caution, error of caution rather than not in this scenario. And I'm really behind the curve, because what these people are saying is that as these crop failures become more and more evident, and the northern regions become less and less productive, and all of the growing gets shoved further and further south, food's going to get expensive. It's going to get expensive. And, so buying, wheat groats or oat berries or chia seeds, alfalfa seeds, a lot of mung beans, any beans, all of your beans, get those seeds, and you got to get, you got to buy them bulk. I mean, some of it you might need to eat, and some of it you might need to plant. So you got to think ahead. And I'm not being a doomsdayer here. I'm just reporting to you that this idea that we're going into a global warming scenario is nonsense. It's absolutely the reverse. There are winter storms happening at both ends of the hemisphere, of the globe, north and southern hemisphere. And, so we're looking at later springs and earlier winters. And why I'm stressing on this is I addressed this in a previous show with the Chinese, and that is they have a long memory, those Chinese. Goes back 8,000 years at least. And they have documented, they have some of the best solar observation records kept of any civilization. And in their record keeping, every grand solar minimum, a dynasty fell because they couldn't feed their people. It's just that simple. These dynasties fall with every solar minimum. The last one that we had that was of any significance was somewhere between 1620 and 1850 was the last real mini ice age, so to speak. And it was hard. There were crop failures and bad weather routinely in those couple of centuries. And it could very well be that our grand solar minimum could be short-lived, because that's how these things are, people. Nature is funny. It's fickle. It does what it wants. And we can't, we can only predict so much, and then nature just does what it wants. So we could be looking at a 3-year event. It could be a 10-year event. It could be 30 or 40 years. Or sometimes the sun just goes to sleep for centuries. And then you have glaciation, and then you have an ice age. I mean, a real honest-to-God ice age, where you get miles of ice. Miles. Think about that. 2 miles of ice over our heads. And that was here not that long ago, folks. It melted all away about 15,000 years ago over North America. The ice cap, 2 miles high. That can happen. I'm not saying that it will, but the solar observations are definitely showing a severe drop-off in solar energy hitting the Earth. So there's that. And that would like to segue into, the thought of, civilizations past. And I don't have a presentation for that particular subject tonight, but I want to think about our civilization now relative to things like, say Egypt, or this place in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. This is a recent archaeological excavation, very, very advanced stoneworking and architectural design features, very advanced, 15,000 plus years. They, at a certain point, they don't know how old this stuff is. They don't know how old the Sphinx is, or the pyramids are. They really don't. But what are we leaving? I was just thinking about, my dad the other day, and when I was young, he says, well, you're young, and you're going to leave your mark on the world, and do your best, son, and all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking about, well, what kind of mark on the world are we leaving? Can we leave pyramids, and can we leave, cuneiform on baked clay tablets that last 5 to 8 to 10,000 years, so that people in the future can read what we did and how did we survive it, or if we survive whatever it is that we're going to experience here? What are we leaving behind? I was so mad last night. I was watching a YouTube presentation from CNBC, okay? And, they have this young hip kid, maybe 25 years old, explaining what 5G is. And it was the most sugar-coated, unicorns on and bunny rabbits and rainbows kind of presentation about how wonderful it is to have microwave radiation pounding into our heads, because then we're going to be able to drive around in driverless cars, and we'll be able to play video games inside our skulls. I mean, I don't know what. It was just crazy at how this presentation was really about entertaining us with the idea of 5G being this wonderful thing, and getting our consent by thinking so. And it really kind of irritated me. So then I got to looking at the comments, because I wanted to leave a comment. And there were so many comments, I couldn't even get to the end of the list in a reasonable amount of time to leave one for myself. But I was reading these comments, and there was a lot of them that were, I would say at least half of them, and this is a lot of hundreds of comments, about this is a weapon, they're poisoning us, they're going to microwave and fry our brains with this thing. Do we really need to be able to be driving in a car and play a video game at the same time in our skull? I mean, really? I mean, the commentary was very powerful. I found that the comments were almost more powerful. Well, they were more powerful than the video itself, which was just, alarming to my intelligence. So there's that. So I have about 10 minutes left, and I got a couple of stills on a thumb drive, and I want to revisit these a little bit. At the top, I suppose. Here's a quick rundown. All right, so this is a good one. Now this is a blow up. The context picture was behind it. This was taken by my friend Charlie Knox in Falls Village, Connecticut. We're just getting coordinated here, folks. And from BB Hill Road in Falls Village, Connecticut. And he said this was just the weirdest thing that he had ever seen, because it was almost stationary, kind of like observing a comet. It was in the middle of the day, and it seems to be self-illuminated. Now, if you go to the next one, other direction, that's the context picture. Okay, so that's the blow-up. That's the context, and it has a very strange tail, and it was moving but imperceptibly slow. So it wasn't moving like a fast object. It was moving very slow, and you can see that it's a sunset, because we are looking more or less west-northwest. That's the roof of the house there at BB Hill Road. And this is similar to a lot of the objects being photographed or videoed of the odd planetary system that is moving through our planetary system, crossing paths with ours. And I'm suspecting that this, I don't know. Charlie and I, we talked about this at great length. We do not know what this object is. We really don't. It's very unusual. And according to the Sumerian texts, the main planet to be worried about has a comet-like tail. Though I don't think this is that, because I think this is smaller, and it looks to be in our atmosphere. So that's quite a shot there. And we can move along now. So I have this one here to kind of show you that there's stuff floating around up there, flying around up there. I call that a tube craft. Great, I'm glad that you... Now, there's no wings, there's no discernible tail, there's no engine. It's just a tube. And you occasionally see these things spraying a single line, not like a double line from two jet engines, but as though there's one like that one there. Now, what's interesting about this one is it's got this black. For one thing, the airplane is almost invisible. It's not exactly a no plane, but it is a. That one, that one there. And you notice the plane is just visible in that coloration there. And you can see, nice blow up, by the way. That's really quite impressive for just right here at this TV studio. You can see that there's 4 streamers coming off of it, but there's not enough detail that it's too much of a blow up. And that's from an actual film photograph. That's not digital. So that you're actually looking at like the emulsion on the thing. So the next one shows it following the path of this shadow, these strange black lines that move ahead of the plane itself. Now, the black line phenomena has been observed by a lot of people, and it doesn't seem to line up with the positioning of the sun to explain it away. And some people are saying, you know what, we don't know, I don't know, it's just really weird. And that's not a normal contrail, folks. That is stuff being sprayed into the atmosphere. Like that. Now, I was photographing this particular chemtrail because it was very close to the sun. And you get the lens flares. Those are all lens flares, all that other stuff. But if you look at this, how it stops and starts, a contrail doesn't do that, people. An airplane is dumping stuff in the atmosphere for this to happen. That's just, what are they doing? It's clearly not a normal contrail. And it's such a bizarre looking thing that's why I included it tonight, just to really impress upon you that I do my homework. I go out there with the camera and I did the research, and I spent probably 1,500 to 2,000 hours over a 6-8 year period. And look at that. Look at that. There's no plane. There is no airplane. There is just a ball. And I'm not the only one getting photographs like this, but this is unique in that you can see a little orb. You can take your little hand there, and you see there, right there, there's a little orb right there, but there's no plane. And many, many other people are getting very similar photographs to me now. Now, this is a 10-year-old photograph. This goes back to 2006. Now, here is a real curious one. Again, no plane. Where's the plane? No plane. No evidence of an airplane at all. Go back to that one again. Now, if you go up, I don't know if you can you see? You can't really see that. This guy shows up in a number of photographs. And I think that's like an extra dimensional portal. So let's just bear that in mind. It's a very strange looking thing. Very strange things going on. There's all these white flecks, all these little spots down below that. Some people call those like orbs, a swarm of orbs. There seems to be some movement with them. Hard to say.
Not dirt on the floor.
Well, that could be an argument for it. All right, now I show this one because that little guy was in my backyard in Sharon, Connecticut, and it made absolutely no sound, and I had to run out and get this photograph. And it was a very small object, small plane, and it had a kind of an orange-reddish hue, and it just doesn't look normal to me. What looks like a tail in an engine section, it's just a very strange-looking thing. Zoom out. Zoom out. You can zoom out a little more.
That's as far as I can go.
Yeah, okay. So, I believe that to be a drone. I don't think it was more than 10 feet long. And it was hard for me to get that capture, just so you know. And we're running out of time here. So we'll start to wrap it up. And so I'd like to thank you all for watching Conant's show, and I hope to do some more on what's going on with our world, and get you some new photography at some point here. I got to get the time out there in the field. But happy spring, and see you next week. This is Conant Show signing off.